Welcome to the theater. Take a seat, grab some popcorn, and get ready for another horror movie double bill. This is Friday Night Fratricide.
Well, here we are. It's another Friday night, another horror movie double bill for you to enjoy, to savor, to cry at.
Yeah. I'm sorry for making you watch Who Can Kill a Child.
Yeah, the whole theme of innocence this week kind of went out the window a little bit.
It's not really a great idea for a theme because, like, you talk about innocence in films, they're always going to be incredibly depressing.
Yeah.
What's a fun film about the concept of innocence? There's not any.
Yeah.
There's none.
I don't know. Children of the Corn's pretty funny.
I mean, yeah.
But only because it's so bad it's funny.
Yeah.
Okay, well, yeah, usual introductions. I am Fraser.
And I am Ewan.
Before I forget, because
we'll
we constantly
forget.
do
We always
that.
forget.
Yeah, this week's theme, as I said, is Innocence.
Mm-hmm.
We had, again, some pretty polar opposites.
Different films.
Very different.
Very different.
Polarizing is probably a better word to describe Skinamarink, which
Yeah.
was my pick.
Yeah.
Obviously very, very viral at the moment.
Lots of
Everyone's
people
watching it. Everyone's screaming about it. Either
Yeah.
love it or hate it.
Mm.
Don't know. I'll once I get into it, I'll maybe form a better opinion of it.
Yeah.
I still don't really know what I think. And your pick was just thoroughly depressing.
So depressing.
Sorry to say.
So depressing. Yeah, my pick was Who Can Kill a Child,
Yeah.
as I mentioned, which is an old Spanish horror film from the late 70s.
Yeah.
It's just about children getting killed
Yep.
and also killing other people.
Yep.
It's
It's fun.
howdy.
It's a fun time.
Yeah.
You messaged me. You watched it before me.
Yep.
You usually do because I'm always late to these things. But you were messaging me saying like, by the way, when you watch this, you can probably skip the first 10 minutes
Mhm.
because it just bummed me out.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's probably just boring, right? He's probably just bummed out because he's bored.
No.
Nah. But we'll get to that.
Yeah.
Which do you want to start with this week?
I don't know. Do you want me to start with Who Can Kill a Child?
Yeah, let's go with Who Can Kill a Child first then.
So Who Can Kill a Child is all about an English couple who go to a remote Spanish island for a holiday, and they arrive to find all of the adults are missing at first, and there's only a bunch of weird children hanging around who are refusing to talk to them and just kind of laughing at them when they try and talk to them and just generally being a bit weird. And then they realize that the children have all gone mad and have murdered all of the adults, and then they need to basically fight their way out and are pressed with this moral dilemma of, could I bring myself to kill a child if it meant saving my own life?
Yep.
It's an incredibly depressing film.
Yeah.
It's an incredibly depressing concept. And it starts off, as you mentioned, this first 10 minutes, it starts with a montage of real footage of the horrible atrocities that children have been through for the past 100 years, or I guess past 50 years at the point that the film was made.
Yeah.
It starts off with the Holocaust,
Yep.
then goes into the Korean War and the Vietnam War and the partition of India and famine in Africa. And it's all so depressing.
Yep.
It's 10 minutes of them just talking about children dying.
Yep.
It's so sad.
Yep.
And like, I didn't see it coming. I didn't know that that's what it was going to be. I thought this was going to be a relatively cheesy film. And then that's how it kicks off. And I was so sad. I watched this on like a Sunday afternoon and it ruined my day. Oh man.
Yeah, it's weird how it kicks off. It doesn't even give you any kind of introduction or anything. It's just like this weird prologue to the film of all this, as you say, real life footage, watching these horrible, horrible things happening. and it's like intercut with children laughing, like between each sort of 2 or 3 minute segment. There's just like sounds of children laughing, and I guess it's supposed to symbolize like in the rest of the film, the children are getting their revenge. Yeah, like this is them getting payback on the adults for all the horrible things that have happened to them. But you don't know that at the time. You don't really think about it until a good, 3/4 of the way through the film. Yeah. So it's weird. They do kind of pay it off at the end, or kind of towards the end of the film, where it's given a little bit more context. The reason the children are going mad and killing all the adults is because of what they've been put through by the adults, and that's what all of that footage was there to kind of demonstrate at the beginning. I actually kind of missed that because the version of the film that I watched didn't have any Spanish subtitles. The two main characters are speaking English, so most of the film is in English, or doesn't have any dialogue at all. But then there are bits where, the main character's kind of talking to other people, and it's in Spanish, and I didn't get any of it. And they give a little bit of exposition there about like, this is what's happening to the kids, they're getting their revenge. But like, I missed that because it was in Spanish. But what kind of bothered me is, well, not bothered me, what kind of made it a little bit more confusing as well is that all of the footage at the start, it wasn't solely children. Yeah. That were put through that. People. Yeah, it was just humanity in general. Yeah. Or certain peoples, I suppose, that suffered from that. It wasn't specifically children. So, like, I get that that's what they were trying to say, but also it didn't really make much sense and just made everything a hell of a lot more depressing. Yeah. Yeah. Not a whole lot happens as well. No. There's a good, like, hour or so? It's a quite a long film. It's about an hour and 50 minutes or so. It's longer than I thought it was going to be. There's not a huge amount happens. The first maybe half hour, or it takes about half an hour before they even get to the island. Yeah. The opening, they're on like the town that's on the coast. We kind of start there at we see a bunch of people at a beach. There's a kid finds a drowned woman, and then the paramedics get called out. And then that's not relevant to the rest of the film, but that's just a depressing thing to see as well. And then we actually get introduced to the two characters on the bus going into the town, and then they're sort of kicking about. They manage to find a hotel. They're talking about the fact that they're going to this island. That's kind of it. Yeah. And there's a scene when they go into a shop, and you see the guy in the shop has a little TV, and he's watching this documentary that is presumably what the footage from the opening is supposed to be from. Kind of that connects in there, and he sort of like the woman Evelyn kind of clocks it and says, what is that, what are you watching? And the guy sort of doesn't really say anything. He kind of just goes, oh well, it's it is what it is, children have been through so much. And then it's like, okay, I guess we're going to continue with our holiday now, goodbye. And then they finally get to the island. It's all weird and spooky, and there's no one around other than these kids. They try and get some food, and they can't find anything because there's no adults around. Yeah. Typical English tourists. They're like, oh, it's fine, we'll just take what we need and just leave the money. Yeah. They like rifle through someone's like ice cream cart, and then they go into a pub and just like go behind the bar and start taking beers, and the guy starts doing bits. He's like, oh, look at me, I'm a Spanish waiter. And it's like, everyone's dead. Everyone on this island has been murdered. Yeah, my first thought of going to an isolated area like that, they're surrounded by water, there's no quick route away to find nobody else there, nobody speaking my language, especially as like tourists in presumably a touristy island, I would guess. No idea what's going on, nobody around. My first thought wouldn't be like, no, just get some food. Yeah. Just go and chill. Just have a beer. Yeah, I'm sure someone's around somewhere. Just have a beer and a sandwich. My thought would be like, let's find someone or let's leave. Yeah, let's go. They're hanging about for a little while. They're kind of desperately trying to find their way around. They keep getting phone calls from someone who's just kind of whispering over the phone in a language that they don't understand, that's neither English nor Spanish.
turns out to be Dutch, and they kind of continue going around trying to figure out who this is that's been calling them. They go to a hotel, they figure out who it is because it's someone who checked into the hotel like a day or two earlier, and then that's when they see a little girl beating an old man to death with his own walking stick.
Yeah.
And that's kind of when the film really kicks off, because she's clearly snapped and has murdered somebody.
It's actually it's really quite disturbing.
Yeah.
The way that she kills him, because she's just laughing through the whole thing like it's some big game.
Yeah.
And because they're children, and especially because they're children who speak another language from you or from the main characters, it becomes even more, there's this like real disconnect.
Yeah.
With, you know, being able to communicate with them, which makes it really quite just eerie. I don't know. It was really...
Yeah, the idea of not being able to like rationalize somebody or to like reason with someone who's doing something wrong or something that could be affecting you makes it so much worse. So like not speaking the language and being a child really does like escalate that violence and just make it so much creepier. So then, the main character, I cannot remember if I've written the guy's name down. I don't think I did.
I wanted to say Kevin, but I think Kevin's
Tom.
the one in
It's Tom.
Skinamarink. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tom.
Tom follows the girl to try and figure out what's going on, and then she finds a bunch of kids. They're standing around. They're like a piñata beating a dead body that's been strung up to the ceiling.
Yeah. It's with like a scythe as well.
One of them's got a scythe. They're not just like hitting it with sticks. They're like properly going for it. And there was a scene earlier on when they first arrived in the coastal town where they see a bunch of kids playing with a piñata, and they're like, Evelyn doesn't know what it is, presumably just for exposition reasons. And Tom's like, oh, it's a piñata. You hit it. It's got candy in it. So the kids hit it, and then it breaks open and all the candy comes out. And then you see like the kids doing it, and it breaks open and the kids all cheer. And then when he goes and he finds this body and all of the kids, he's like really distressed and disturbed, and he turns away, and you see him standing outside, and then you hear the kids start cheering.
Yeah.
And it just puts this image in your head of like they've broken the body open, and it's and I really liked that. Really creepy, really disturbing, but it's a fun little... It's really cool how they managed to get the image into your head without showing you it.
I don't know. I feel like I feel like it sounded like I was quite critical of this film so far, but I actually did quite enjoy it.
Yeah.
So yeah, moments like that I really liked. Like the way it's shot and framed and everything, and even the acting was surprisingly good.
The acting is good from the two main characters, and
even from some of the kids as well.
Like you always think that kids they're very hit or miss.
Yeah.
Like they're either surprisingly good or they're just bad. A lot of child actors are not going to be good, but like generally they all did a pretty good job, I think. At this point, Tom and Evelyn are like, let's get out of here, we got to get out of Dodge.
Well, he kind of he plays it off. He doesn't
he starts lying to Evelyn, just being like, we should just go, it's fine. Oh, the man, he fell over and hit his head,
so I carried him home.
His
lifeless body.
He's fine now, let's get back on the boat and go back to the mainland, please. And that's when they meet this other guy, this old Spanish guy. He's got a mustache, and they can't really communicate with him very well.
That's his defining trait. He's got a mustache.
He's got a mustache, and he's got a head wound as well. And this is where we get this bit of exposition where he kind of, I think here he says something about like, oh, the kids are getting their revenge because of what's been done to them.
No, I was in the same boat as you. I should have said that I didn't have the subtitles, so I was kind of...
I only found this out reading about the film later, but yeah, this scene doesn't have any Spanish subtitles. So the two of them speak in Spanish for a little while. A little girl comes in who's presumably this guy's daughter and kind of convinces him to go out, and then he leaves, and then they hear him being killed as well.
Yeah.
And at that point, they're both like, okay, we're both on the same page. If we stay here, we're going to get killed. We need to leave. And they do manage to get out of the village at this point to some small place somewhere near the water. There's like a little cottage, I guess. And there's a woman staying there who has a child, or like there's a few kind of older people there, and there are some kids around. And those kids don't seem to be violent. And this is where we kind of get the first supernatural element, really. We don't know exactly what's going on, but the kids seem to be kind of transmitting this violence to each other. They like lock eyes, and it's like a virus, I guess. They like it gets passed on to around them, and then they I
love that shot, by the way. The shot of the woman standing in front of the cottage, and she's watching her kids, and she calls to them to come in, and they don't come in, and the camera just slowly like pans round behind her, and all these kids, like troops, loads of them, are walking down the cliffside behind towards her. I loved that. It was framed really, really nicely.
And it's really, it was really cool. And then, they go in there, they stay there for a little while, and then that's when we get the scene with the kids, the other kids get possessed.
Yeah.
And when Tom and Evelyn try to leave, all of the kids are just stood outside staring at them.
Like the birds.
It is. Apparently it was actually an intentional homage to the birds. This kind of the scene at the end where they go outside and all the kids are just stood there not saying anything, and they kind of walk slowly and kind of tiptoe around them to get to the car so that they don't set them off, I guess. And then they head back into the town properly. They're trying to get back to their boat so that they can get off the island. Tom, at this point, I guess, decides that he is willing to kill children to get away, because he tries to run a bunch of them down. Evelyn does not feel willing to do that and kind of grabs the steering wheel off of him and causes them to crash. They run into the old building to stay away from the kids. It's an old police station. There's like a prison cell. Oh God, this scene is really depressing.
Yeah, it's not pleasant.
Oh my God.
They're kind of, do you want me to take over? They kind of lock themselves in this room, not intentionally. They just run into a dead end in one of the cells. Yeah. And the kids, they lock the door, but the kids get this huge like battering ram. They surround the cell and try and barge their way in. And one of the kids grabs one of the, presumably police deputy or whoever, one of their guns, like a handgun, and crawls around the outside of the cell and climbs in through the window. And it's this young kid. He's like, he
looks maybe 3 years old.
And pulls up this handgun, aims it at Evelyn, and he's like smiling while he does it.
Yeah.
And Tom notices at the last second and turns around and shoots him in the head.
And shoots the kid.
Oh God, it's bleak, man.
It is.
I know they're evil kids, but it's still...
It is very depressing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it gets even more cheery.
Yeah.
After the kids disperse.
Well, the thing that kind of made it even worse, because they're clearly like, they're not on like the ground floor. They're up a bit. I don't know how far up they're supposed to be, but it's like it's not a prop, like a glass window. It's like an open.
It's like an open
hole with bars.
Yeah.
So the kid can't climb in, but he's now dead, lying on this little kind of window ledge on the outside. And Tom goes over and pushes him off. And there's kind of a beat of a second or two before you hear the body hitting the ground.
Thud. Yeah.
And it's, oh God, they keep putting these images in your head without actually showing you anything, which is very impressive, but also so depressing. And then it gets even worse, because Evelyn, which we haven't mentioned actually, that Evelyn is pregnant.
Yeah.
And now that I've mentioned it, you probably know where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
Evelyn suddenly starts to not feel so well. And
she kind of gets into hysterics.
She's very upset and clearly in a lot of pain. And I think Tom is kind of trying to calm her down by saying, like, you're just having whatever pregnancy pains. And she's convinced that it's different, and she realizes that the baby is killing her from the inside. Oh, man.
I wasn't sure, because the way the scene plays out, I couldn't really tell if that is what actually was happening, or if she just believed that's what was happening.
Yeah. It's entirely possible.
Either way, the end result is the same.
The stress or whatever gets to her, and she dies.
Yeah.
And then at that point, Tom's gone over the edge. He's off the deep end.
He's got nothing left to lose now.
His wife's dead. His unborn child is dead. He's already killed one kid. So at this point, he stumbles out into the street and he just starts gunning down children.
Yeah. I didn't expect it, right? Even at this point in the film, I was watching, and he kind of stands in front of these rows of kids, like a good group of them, and holds up I don't know what it is, like a submachine gun or something, and he kind of, there's a good couple of minutes where he pauses and he just glassy eyed, doesn't really know what to do, and you're not sure really think he's going to do it.
That very easily could have been the end of the film if he just like decided that he couldn't do it and then the kids killed him.
Yeah,
that would be the end of the film. But like, no, he does it. He just shoots a bunch of kids,
guns them down,
and runs through them. Manages to get to the docks. Is getting beaten up by a bunch of the kids and trying to fend them all off. And that's when the police show up. And of course, that does not look good for him at all.
Yeah,
and he gets Night of the Living Deaded. And he gets shot by the cops because it looks like he's murdering or trying to murder a bunch of kids.
I think he does like kill a couple of them at that point as well.
He's got like an oar for the boat, and he's like beating the kids over the head and
yeah.
everything. So yeah, he's probably killed a couple of kids in front of those cops. So they shoot him. The kids then start crying, which is presumably part of their ruse, I guess. A bunch of the kids start crying. The older ones start tending to the younger ones. It's like, oh, the bad man is dead now. It's all over. And then the police get off the boat. They decide they're going to go into town and go to investigate. And as these three cops are walking away, one of the kids from behind them shouts, "Adios." And he turns around and he sees that they're unloading the guns off of the police boat and handing them out to all the kids. And a bunch of them are just armed now. And then one of the kids at the front with a rifle just shoots the three cops.
Yep.
And then it cuts to all the kids just the next day playing at the beach, playing in the harbour, just having a good time. And that's the end of the film. They've gotten rid of all the adults. They're free to just enjoy their little
a bunch of them get on the
guess.
boat as well.
Some of them get on the boat, and there's a last little bit of dialogue in Spanish that I missed, and it wasn't until I went and looked up afterwards what it is that they say. But it's basically they're implying that they're going to go to the mainland.
Yeah.
One of them kind of says something like, that's all the adults dealt with, and the other one's like, oh well, there's more adults on the mainland, and then that's the end of the film, and it's really, really scary. It's really like chilling. The idea that all of these kids are just like gonna turn on the adults because they're so easily gonna be able to manipulate the adults.
Yeah.
They're using that innocence.
Innocence.
We're getting on the theme of innocence.
On brand.
They're using that as a weapon. They're like, we can just convince them of anything because we're kids, and they're always going to believe that we're not capable of murder. So then when we do murder a bunch of people, we can just get away with it. It's fine. Yeah. It's grim.
It is very, very grim. It's not a particularly pleasant watch.
No.
But it is a pretty good film.
I thought.
Actually.
A very well made film. I enjoyed it.
It draws a lot of parallels to the likes of Children of the Corn. That's probably the easiest comparison to make because it's a bunch of kids kill the adults in the town and go mad.
Yeah.
But Children of the Corn doesn't explore the same themes that this one does, and not in the same way either. Yeah. It's far more like, I don't want to say straight play because it is pretty goofy, run-of-the-mill horror where the good guys get away at the end and they manage to beat the demon that was infesting the kids, and everyone lives happily ever after. Whereas here, it's just not as cheery, and it definitely leans harder into, like you said, the no one will believe you. We're in control now, kind of thing. Didn't feel good coming out of that film.
No, very, very depressing when I finished watching it. But I was pleasantly surprised by how good it was. I was expecting it to not be very good, to be honest, because it's not a particularly well remembered film. It's a right pain in the hoop trying to find a copy of this to watch, because it's not like on any streaming services. It's not, you can't even get like DVDs or Blu-rays of it very easily. So yeah, it was really difficult finding a place to watch it, but we did, and I really enjoyed it. I was surprised, pleasantly surprised.
How many stars out of 5? How many kids out of 5
How many
would
kids
you shoot?
Out of 5, I'm actually going to double check because I wrote it down and now I've forgotten. I gave it 3.5.
3.5. Okay.
3.5. So certainly above average, definitely worth watching. I didn't think it was like a, absolutely phenomenal best film ever.
No.
It's certainly quite dated in its style. I think in some places it's a little bit heavy-handed, like, using real Holocaust footage at the beginning. But like,
could have done without that.
Could
Definitely
probably have done without that. But it's a super interesting concept.
Mm-hmm.
This like asking yourself this moral question, like who can kill a child, and then like just taking that and running with it. And it's like unrelenting in that, which I really respect.
Yeah. It's remarkably well shot as well for mid 70s
76
foreign film.
Yeah.
Not particularly well known for being well shot or well produced.
This was like one of 2 films that the director did as well.
Right.
It's not like this was like a prolific director.
Yeah. But there's a couple of really, really great shots.
Mm-hmm.
The shot of him in the supermarket, of Tom, when he goes to the supermarket when they're looking for food, and he's walking down the aisle, and the camera just pans across this dead woman lying on the floor as he's walking, and just completely ignores it and keeps going.
Mm-hmm.
That was beautiful. That was like mwah, chef's kiss.
Some really great stuff.
And then, like I said, the shot on the beach as well with the woman as it pans round and the hordes of children coming down the cliffside. So there was some really, really like memorable shots in it as well, which surprised me. But I could have done with a bit better pacing. That was the bit that I'm definitely marked it down the most for.
Mm-hmm.
As I said, it's like a good 2/3, 3/4 of the way through the film before anything really starts to happen. There's a lot of setup. There's a lot of stuff you could probably skip over.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where it definitely got marked down for me.
Yeah. Like I say, the first half hour is basically not even on the island yet. And then there's a good amount of time where they're on the island. They're kind of just faffing about. And it's like, we know what it's building up to.
Mm-hmm.
We know what's happening going into the film. So we don't need that much setup.
Yeah.
I think the first hour even probably could have been cut right the way down.
Yeah.
Cut it to a tight, maybe 80 minutes rather than about 110 or whatever it is.
Yeah, easily.
But
nonetheless, good acting and good cinematography definitely made up for that. A good concept, some genuinely creepy moments. There's no sort of jump scares or anything, but it's pretty unsettling at points.
Yeah.
3 out of 5 stars.
3 out of 5 for you as well?
3 out of 5.
Oh, 3 out of 5 for you. 3.5 for me.
You did 3.5.
Yeah.
I did 3 out of 5. Yeah. I think it's worth a watch. Wouldn't necessarily go out of my way to recommend it to people.
Yeah.
But if you're interested in those kind of films,
if someone told me that they were a fan of Children of the Corn, like they really like Children of the Corn, I would say, you know what, go and watch this because it's basically Children of the Corn but better.
Yeah,
and from 10 years earlier.
Yeah.
So that'd be that's pretty much where I am as well. It's I would recommend it to people, but definitely only to a certain type of people. We mentioned a while ago when we were talking about Asylum in our first episode that like these kind of British horror films, especially from the kind of mid-70s, it's very fun to play Spot the Doctor Who actor.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you recognised Lewis Fiander, who played Tom.
I didn't.
He was in.
I recognised him, but I don't know what from.
He was in Nightmare of Eden.
Was he?
Yeah, he was Professor Trist apparently in Nightmare of Eden.
Oh, he was the bad guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. It's been a while since I've seen that one, so I didn't recognize him. But I was looking up everybody on IMDb, and that was the only other credit
That's pretty cool.
Like recognized at all.
That's definitely going to be a running segment on the show whenever we watch
Spot
these older films. Yeah, Spot the Doctor Who actor. Yeah, good. Well, yeah. I mean, I want to say thank you for recommending it. I'm not sure if I really can because I'm still feeling a bit bummed out by it.
Definitely, yeah.
But it was worth a watch. So thank you for that at least.
You're welcome.
Okay, well, it's the halfway point.
Intermission time.
We got nothing to plug really.
Don't have anything to plug. We've not got any games this week.
No sponsorships. Sponsor us. You like horror? You like horror movies?
Yeah.
You like podcasts?
Yeah,
you want us to shout you out?
Woo.
Give us a holler.
We'll do it.
We'll shout you out in the intermission. And now the intermission's over. You lost your chance.
You did.
Done.
Sorry. Too slow. Neener.
Okay, so our second film of this evening is Skinamarink. 2022, although it really only came into prominence this year, 2023.
Yeah, much, yeah.
It only became available on streaming on Shudder this year. I believe it was only aired at like festivals last year.
It got leaked.
And then it got leaked. From festival footage, yeah. Which is a shame, but in saying that, it did lead to the virality of it.
I think the style of the film definitely led to that, but it had like it gained it was like a cryptid or something. It was like people started seeing little clips of it, and word of mouth just made it go absolutely mad. A lot of people have compared it to the Blair Witch Project in that sense, that it's like before it even became publicly available to watch, lots of people were talking about it. Mm-hmm. So
I mean, it was, for a good couple of weeks there, it was everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, if you follow any horror Twitter, horror YouTube, Reddit, anywhere, this film
people
was
were talking about it
everywhere.
Yeah.
And I can understand why, to be honest.
Yep.
I get it. Whether you love it or hate it, you have to at least respect the originality and how it stands out from the pack.
Definitely.
So yeah, Skinamarink, 2022, directed by Kyle Edward Ball, who I believe started as a YouTuber.
Yeah.
Doing the sort of analog horror, VHS horror on YouTube. You've seen The Back Rooms, Slender Man, that kind of style.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't realize this, but Skinamarink's actually based on one of his short films called Heck, I believe it's called, which is a sort of similar theme. Kids trapped in a house, but I think it varies slightly.
It's only like 20 minutes long.
Yeah, it's quite short. So produced on a $15,000 budget,
which is pennies
for a film like
budget.
this, and grossed well into the millions.
Yeah.
So good on him for that. Remind you of Paranormal Activity by any
Paranormal
chance?
Activity,
Exact same thing happened. It was like 15 grand budget as well, and look how much they must be rolling it in now. But yeah, as I said at the start, it did come out to kind of polarizing reviews. Loads of people were like, this is the greatest horror film ever made. It's the scariest horror film ever made. And other people were like, this is trash.
Yeah.
This is absolutely awful. Why would you bother? Nothing scary about it. So I'm curious to see where you sit on this, because you're not really one for sort of found footagey horror as much as I am anyway.
Yeah.
And because that kind of stuff really scares me, I'm definitely on the side of it being on the scarier end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
So I'm curious where you sit with this. We'll get to that. It's fine.
Yeah.
You can give your notes. Give your notes spread out, sprinkled out.
Yeah, I will.
And as you said as well, it got leaked before the actual release on streaming. So I believe it was something to do with the festival gave out copies to people who were at the festival, and it ended up getting published online.
Yeah,
and then it was all over TikTok and Reddit and posting clips from the film, and that kind of made it as notorious as it is. So yeah, if you've watched any of the analog horror on YouTube, I don't know if you have.
Not really. I did. I actually went and watched a little bit of Heck, just in preparation for this because I was interested. I kind of skipped through it. I was like, oh, it's basically the same thing as Skinamarink. Okay, cool. I didn't sit and watch all of it, but like, yeah, interesting.
It's a very unique style of horror,
and
it's very like Skinamarink. It's very polarizing. It's very like, if you find it scary, it's terrifying.
Yeah.
If you don't find it scary, it's just boring and weird, and there's nothing really to it. I personally, find it pretty terrifying. Which is why it took me 2 sittings to watch this film.
Yeah.
Because the first time, I think I mentioned this in the podcast, but it was an
did.
introduction episode. I watched the up until the bedroom scene.
Mm-hmm.
I watched at home alone late at night, and I couldn't. I had to turn it off. I was like, I'm so freaked out right now.
Yeah.
I have to turn this off, which is not something I do often with films, unless they're awful and I don't want to watch them anymore. But I don't normally turn films off because I'm too scared.
Yeah.
But this definitely...
It's very rare that I
pushed
will
it too
stop
far. watching
a film partway through for any reason, to be
Yeah.
totally honest. I managed to sit through this.
You managed to sit through
But-
this.
It was difficult.
It is really unsettling.
It is.
There's something so... I don't know what it is. Like, it's like a primal fear of the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
Watching these like long held shots of dark hallways, of like something not quite in frame, that just lets your imagination run wild.
Yeah.
And that really, really creeps me out.
Yeah. There's a lot of there's all this like blur and like film scratches, I don't know, like
Distortion.
film grain
Yeah.
kind of distortion over the top of the film. Like you say, it's this analog style. I don't think it was actually filmed analog. I think it was
Probably not.
like in post. They like
Yeah.
made it look like that. But when you have a shot of a dark hallway and it's mostly black, or you have a shot of, as it happened a few times in the film, literally nothing. It's just a black screen.
Mhm.
That's all you're seeing, but it's this film grain. It's really easy to start seeing shapes
Yep.
in the darkness.
Yep.
And like, oh my God, there's something standing there. Oh my God, there's a face. It's staring at me. And it really sets you off.
It does.
Really
It
creeps you
plays
out.
with your mind.
And it's great. It's
yeah.
so cool.
Yeah, it is. So the plot of the film is really quite loose, and the film is quite long. It's similar to Who Can Kill a Child that way. It does have pacing issues. It does feel like an extended version of these like analog horror YouTube shorts, which really could have been translated a little bit better onto a feature-length film, I feel. Or at least if they'd padded out the plot a bit more. It's very much 2 kids, brother and sister, wake up in the middle of the night and they're locked in the house. The doors and various other bits of furniture in their house have started to disappear.
Mm-hmm.
Their parents aren't there and they don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's the plot. There's no real change throughout the whole film.
pretty
There's
much it.
little bits and pieces, but you know, the first maybe 40 minutes or so of the film is just the 2 of them watching cartoons on TV, get up to go to the bathroom. Oh, the bathroom's disappeared.
Yeah.
Go back to bed, wake up, watch cartoons, play with some Lego, go back to bed, and that's it.
Yeah.
It doesn't really kick off until that bedroom scene,
Mm-hmm.
where is it Kaylee, the little girl, that goes upstairs,
Yeah, Kaylee goes into the bedroom.
gets called
Parents'
upstairs
bedroom.
by a mysterious voice. The voice, which I thought was really quite cool. I don't know, it was just kind of unique the way they did it. They had this voice, the distorted and what in the background that you couldn't really understand, but it had subtitles.
Yeah.
Whenever this mysterious voice spoke, I thought that was really cool. They did it when the kids spoke a wee bit as well, but mostly when this weird voice popped up.
Yeah.
And it says like, Kaylee, come upstairs. And she goes upstairs into her parents' bedroom, and of course it's empty, and the camera in this shot, it's this really long shot, and the camera's just kind of going back and forwards throughout the room. And while that's happening, the voice says like, Kaylee, look under the bed. And she goes down and she looks under the bed and there's nothing there. And then she goes back up and there's nothing there. And then she looks under the bed again and there's nothing there.
Yeah.
And then she comes back up a second time and her mum is, or presumably meant to be her mum, is sitting on the end of the bed with her back to the camera. Oh, that's the point where I turned it off.
Yeah.
I couldn't. I was so creeped out. I was so waiting for her to like turn around and I'd get a huge jump scare or something.
Yeah.
I don't know what I was expecting, but it freaked me out to no end.
There's not a lot of jump scares in this film.
Like 2.
There's a few,
Yeah.
but there's not a lot.
Yeah.
There are a lot of scenes. Pretty much the entire film is made up of scenes where you think there's going to be a jump scare.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think kind of there is a point where when the first one kind of happens, I'm trying to think, like I've kind of lost track of the order of when things happen, but I think it's like there's a shot kind of the kitchen and you hear the voice kind of telling Kaylee to go upstairs or something, and then you suddenly see a hand on the door frame, just for like one frame, and there's like a screeching sound.
That's at the bedroom. That's at the end of the bedroom scene.
It's just like just that. That's kind of the first jump scare that you get. And at that point, oh my God, I can't believe you've not muted your phone.
I'm so sorry. I'm so bad for this.
Oh
my God, everything's buzzing.
Like up until that point, there have been lots of scenes where it's like there easily could have been a jump scare, but I didn't see it. So yeah, there's like lots of scenes where they easily could put in a jump scare and they don't. Like it feels like they're building up to something, and then there's nothing. And at this point in the film, I was kind of getting, I don't want to say I was getting bored, because I was definitely still like engaged, because I found it very creepy, and I found like the way they were doing everything was very interesting, which did keep me engaged. But I was kind of like, okay, nothing's happening. There's a lot of build up and there's no payoff to the build up. It's kind of frustrating. It's making me a little bit not want to watch the film. I'm kind of just like, oh, fine, whatever. And then we get our first proper jump scare, and at that point it's like, okay, they are willing to jump scare us sometimes.
Yeah.
And I was on the edge of my seat. I had kind of moved back. Now I'm back on the edge of my seat again.
Yeah.
Like, and I like that.
Yeah, it is frustrating. I think even after that point, it is frustrating at the lack of payoff to a lot of these moments.
Mm-hmm.
But I know what you mean. It's very much, it's all playing with your mind, and it's all like, is there going to be a scare here? Is there not going to be a scare here? Who knows? Better keep watching. Yeah. And it's so like engrossing. You want to keep watching, but you're also like, I really want to just turn this off and go to bed.
Yeah.
That first jump scare, that's at the end of the bedroom scene, because we have it kind of, the camera turns towards the doorway, and then we hear like bones cracking in the background and the mother talking, and then there's this the hand puts its, whatever it is, creature puts its hand on the door, and there's this huge screeching noise that just it would make anyone jump. Like it just the shock of it and the sound, which was actually kind of annoying, if anything, but like it felt a wee bit cheap.
It's hard to get the balance right with jump scares.
Yeah.
It's hard to get an effective one that doesn't feel
I know.
cheap, but yeah.
Well, the next one. So the next one after that, Kaylee again gets called down to the basement. And then she starts crying, and it sort of cuts off, and you don't really know what's going on, and it cuts back to Kevin, the other boy, upstairs. And he gets called down to the basement, and he goes down, and he's got his little flashlight, and he's kind of looking around the basement, and then it like suddenly cuts to black, and there's like this pop-up jump scare of Kaylee with no eyes and no mouth, and it's like, it's not like a jump scare. There's no like piercing noise when it comes on screen, but it like properly takes you back, and you're like, oh no. Oh no. And that's her kind of dealt with for the rest of the film. Kevin's on his own for the remainder of the film. The scene with the kitchen knife. Again, it's not, it kind of almost jump scares you a little bit, but it's more like the idea of it. The voice tells Kevin to go into the kitchen, and you hear like the sound of like a like a sort of switchblade opening. So I don't know what kind of knife it is, but the sound of something opening, and you see the text on the screen and like the ghostly mumbling in the background. It says, "Kevin, put the knife in your eye," and it's like, no,
Don't do it, Kevin.
don't do that.
Don't put the knife in
Don't
your
do that,
eye.
Kevin. And then he does, and you hear the noise, and then you hear him screaming, and there's loads of long shots of the hallway with him like crying in the background. It's really horrible.
Yeah.
And then the remain, like, this is getting towards the end of the film. The last like 10 minutes become really quite abstract and weird.
Yeah.
Kevin goes upstairs again and then gets like sucked into an endless hallway. All of his toys are like scattered on the ceiling and across the walls.
Yeah.
And he gets like dragged through the hallway.
The hallway keeps getting bigger and bigger.
And then he gets killed repeatedly.
Yeah.
I don't really know what it's supposed to signify.
There's a shot earlier in the film when they're watching cartoons, and I didn't really pick up on this until I saw someone else mention it. But there's a shot earlier on in the film of like there are quite a lot of shots of the kind of just the cartoons.
Yeah,
They've got these like royalty free whatever old cartoon,
like
public
Looney Tunes or
domain
whatever,
old
yeah.
cartoons. And there's a shot of one of them where like it starts skipping, like the tape starts repeating itself over and over
Yeah.
again. And one of the characters is like, he's like shrinking himself. He puts one hand under his feet and one hand on his head, and then like brings his hands together and like shrinks him down.
Okay.
Like shrinks himself down. And it keeps happening over and over again. And a lot of people think that that's supposed to be what's happening to Kevin. He's being like crushed.
Yeah.
And it's just repeating over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Because we keep seeing the shots of like, it's like the hallway, but it's upside down because like the carpet's on the ceiling rather than on the floor, and you see like blood splatters out, and then it's gone, and then it splatters out again, and there's just like the screaming and the crying
in between. Yeah. It's nasty.
It is.
It's pretty nasty.
It's pretty nasty.
And it's all this like playing with your imagination, because you don't see anything.
Yeah.
You don't know what's going on. And oh god, yeah. But he survives or is brought back to life or never really died in the first place, and we're just watching some weird imagination. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's very vague. There's not really much of an explanation. The creature does say at one point that he can, or they can, control anything. They can do anything they want. And that kind of, we see loads of shots of the hallway. It like skips forward in time. There's like a shot that's like 550 days later. So presumably Kevin's just like being tortured for an eternity in this weird hell in his own house. And we finally get this last shot of the dark hallway, I guess, again. And there's this very, very faint face with what looks like no eyes and no mouth, standing there talking to Kevin. It doesn't really say much. It's just like, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" And then the film just kind of ends.
And then that's the end of the film. Yeah, that's kind of then paying off that, like I mentioned, there's lots of the dark shots where you can, your brain starts to see things, because it starts off empty, like a lot of the other shots, and then it's this face slowly comes into view. So it's like at first you think you're seeing things because you've been seeing things the whole film.
Yeah.
But this time it's real.
It's there.
Oh man.
Yeah.
It's so spooky.
Yeah. It's really, if you're into this style of horror, and you lean into it, you can really scare yourself here. Like, it really is very, very unsettling. Excuse me. Just the whole letting your imagination run wild thing. Just, oh, no. I know I watched most of the film through my hands.
Yeah.
Like, I physically could not watch the full screen because it was just too spooky. I was expecting something to jump out at me.
Yeah.
Oh, no. I might go watch it again. Now I know what's going to happen at each scene.
Yeah.
don't know. Maybe I'll appreciate it more.
Maybe.
Yeah. But yeah, there's a lot to love about the film, and there's also, I can totally understand the criticism as well.
Yeah.
Like, even the harshest criticism, saying that the film's boring, saying that it doesn't make any sense. Like, it doesn't.
Yeah.
And it is pretty boring. And I think it very much comes down to you personally.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to enjoy this film, you will.
Yeah.
If you're not into it and you don't enjoy it, then you don't enjoy it. Like, it's
yeah, it's a real Marmite kind of film. Either you love it or you hate it.
Yeah.
Like, it's yeah, I think a lot of the people who are looking at it as being boring, or they're complaining that it doesn't make sense, they're probably looking at it as like a standard like narrative film, and it's really not that at all. It's very experimental. It's all just about the style and the visuals, and it's about, frankly, about scaring the shit out of you.
Yeah.
So to watch it and be expecting a standard 3-act narrative that makes perfect sense and has no plot holes and everything's spelled out to you and keeps you engaged 100% of the time, that's never going to happen.
Yeah.
So if that's the kind of film that you're looking for,
go watch Paranormal Activity.
Yeah. If that's the kind of film that you're looking for, you're probably not going to enjoy Skinamarink, because it's not that.
Yeah, it's really not.
But I don't really think it's fair to give it a lot of criticism for not being that kind of film. I can see why people are criticizing it. And there's nothing wrong with not liking that kind of film, but like, it doesn't make it a bad film. It just makes it different from what you wanted.
Yeah. And I think even just saying Paranormal Activity there, I think it probably didn't help itself. I don't think they deliberately marketed it like this, but just through word of mouth and whatever, it was like, this is the new Paranormal Activity. Yeah. This is the new scariest found footage film. And that really didn't help its case.
No.
Because Paranormal Activity is a very different kind of film.
Yeah.
Despite the fact they're both
even people
set in a house and film found footage, they are very different movies.
To be honest, I think even people calling it found footage is kind of throwing people off, because it's not really.
Yeah.
Like, there's no, in canon explanation for the camera, like for what is shooting.
That's true.
It's not like, Paranormal Activity, they're setting up the cameras in the house to try and catch the ghost, or in Gonjiam, they're filming themselves for like a live stream.
Yeah.
This is just, there's just footage that looks of the time. It looks like it's being captured on a video camera, but it's not explained. They're not actually filming themselves.
Yeah.
So it's not really, I don't know.
It's analog. It's analog horror. I think that is the
is.
genre that it falls into. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I think I fall a little bit more towards the middle, if I'm being honest. Like, you're saying Marmite, but I don't know. I kind of related to a lot of the criticisms, despite enjoying it quite a bit. So yeah, I would argue it's more Marmite if you're looking at it in a am I going to be scared sense.
Yeah. Yeah, potentially.
Rather than as a am I going to enjoy this film sense.
I find it hard to believe that there are people out there that are watching it and not being scared by it. Like, I think even if you aren't unsettled necessarily by this like analog horror, even if you find it boring a lot of the time, there's a lot of stuff in this that's that would be unsettling to anybody. There's some really effective scares in there.
Yeah.
Beyond that analog aspect.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree. Like, I think that people that don't have a taste for that and don't find it scary would find the film a lot more boring and wouldn't find it as scary as I think clearly we both have. But
yeah.
I find like people who say like, oh, it wasn't scary, I didn't find it scary at all, I think they're talking out their arse. And I know that I shouldn't say that as someone who's kind of supposed to be giving a semi-serious review of the film. I shouldn't be saying that other people are talking out their ass, but I do find it really hard to believe that there are people out there that didn't find it scary or unsettling in the slightest.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I certainly find it hard to believe. Like, this is the first film in a long time that I've had to turn off halfway through.
Yep.
But in saying that, people do have different tastes. People
Yeah, absolutely.
are frightened by different things. Like some people are frightened by serial killers. Some people are frightened by aliens. Some people are frightened by little chatterbox toys.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Different strokes.
Different strokes.
Different strokes. Well, we've said about all we can.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you want to succinctly sum up your review?
Yeah.
With a cheeky, how many Skinamarink out of 5?
So I am kind of in the same boat as you, saying that you kind of fell in the middle, because I think for the kind of film that it is, for this experimental, like, it's all about the aesthetic, it's all about the scares.
Yeah.
Those two things are knocked out of the park.
Yeah.
So looking at it from the perspective of being that type of film, I would probably give it 5 stars. But that's not really the kind of film that I like personally.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't particularly enjoy watching it. I wouldn't watch it again.
Yeah.
I found it very impressive and I found it very scary, but I didn't necessarily enjoy watching it. So from that perspective, I want to give it a very low ranking.
Yeah.
So I'm probably just going to have to fall in the middle, and I'm going to have to give it a 3 and say that you really just have to watch it and make your own opinion.
Yeah, I think that sums it up pretty well, to be honest.
Like, it's absolutely not my taste. I found it, like I said, I shouldn't say it's boring, because I wasn't necessarily bored. I just was kind of waiting for it to be over the whole time.
Yeah.
Because not a lot was happening, and I didn't necessarily enjoy the aesthetic of it, and the fact that it was really unsettling was very cool and very impressive for maybe about 10-20 minutes. And then after that, I was like, okay, I'm done. I want to see how it ends, but I don't want to continue watching.
No, yeah.
Basically. So I think it could very easily have done being maybe 10 minutes long. 10-20 minutes. Like, which is why I think, like, Heck probably did a better job, I think. I think stretching out to 2 hours or an hour 40 or however long it is.
Yeah, it's quite long.
It was a bit of a misstep.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think condensing this particular brand of horror down definitely serves it a lot better than stretching it out. I was half a star more generous than you.
Yeah.
I gave it 3.5. But I didn't look at it as two separate things. I didn't look at it as like how well it did standing by itself and how well you enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I kind of took those together, and I think it does suffer from narrative issues.
Yeah.
I think even if it is an experimental film like this, you still need something cohesive to tie the full film together.
To be that length, absolutely.
Yeah, and it lacked a lot of that for me. Like the first half hour, super boring. The segments between the bedroom and like when Kevin cuts his eye out, again, that's another like 15 minutes of filler where nothing really happens. And then even like the last 5-10 minutes of the film, there was a lot of recurring shots, a lot of repetition. And I know that's like the theme of the film, but it was just a bit too much.
Yeah.
So, yes, whilst it was pretty terrifying and really quite scary, it more so if you let yourself be scared by it, it did have a lot of issues. So I kind of, I would recommend it, and I would recommend that you form your own opinion on it.
Yeah.
But I definitely enjoyed it more than I didn't. So 3.5 Skinamarink out of 5.
Yeah. 3 skinky malinkies.
3, yeah, that's the one. Cool. Well, that is our horror double bill for tonight.
Yeah.
2 very cheery films. Super happy to have watched them and just feel great. And
both so depressing.
yeah, they're really not fun films. So apologies, everyone.
Yep.
But for next week, I think we've got something a little bit more fun planned, a little bit more joyous.
Hope so.
We're going with the theme of films based on comics. I believe is the one we're going with this week.
Yeah.
Can I go first? Because you said you had a couple to think of.
I have a couple of ideas. I have one that I want to do, but there's a good chance that it's also what you've picked.
Okay.
So I do have a backup.
So I don't have a backup.
Okay, you go first then.
Okay.
And then if it is what I think it is, then I will have a good backup.
It might be, because I mentioned it before. It was a good friend of mine. I don't want to say that she recommended it, because she didn't recommend I watch it. She just mentioned it to me, and I was like, I need to watch this film.
Okay.
It is a German film called Killer Condom.
Oh, it's not what I thought it was going to be. Okay.
Okay, so that's good. At least you've got something different.
Nice.
But yeah, it is, I can't remember what the German title for it is, but it's 1980s, I think. I need to double check. Film starring some, I by the sounds of the synopsis, some pretty dicey stereotypes.
Okay, cool.
And killer condom, and it's so intriguing. I need to watch it.
Yeah.
Even if it's the worst thing I've ever seen, I need to know.
Okay.
I need to know. So
okay,
there we go. That's my pick for this week.
When we first came up with the idea for this podcast and we were talking about like what kind of films we both like, I kept saying like, oh, I'm going to make you watch so many bad films. The two films that I think are going to stand out as the worst from our first few episodes are going to be this and the Fog remake, both of which were your idea. So
Killer Condom might be amazing.
it could be great. You know what? It could be great.
I'm pretty sure the main character is an Italian detective called Tony Macaroni.
Okay, incredible. I'm excited. I'm on board.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right.
Very not offensive stereotype
Very cool.
there.
Thank you, Kanye. Very cool. Right. Yeah, so I thought you were going to go with something a little bit more mainstream than that.
Okay.
So I guess I'll go for it because it's a film that I've not seen, but I'm very excited to watch. And a lot of people probably don't even realize that it's based on a comic or graphic novel from the kind of early to mid, possibly late 2000s. I'm not sure. For some reason, I want to say 2008.
Okay.
30 Days of Night.
You've not seen 30 Days of Night?
I've not seen 30 Days of Night.
Oh, cool. I'm well excited to watch it.
And I'm excited to
then.
watch it because it looks really cool. It sounds like a really interesting concept. I love a vampire film. I think it's going to be maybe not like a fun watch, but it's definitely going to keep me engaged. And it's like a kind of action horror, which I think
I don't want to get ahead of myself and give too much away, but I love that film.
Yeah.
It is good. I really enjoyed it.
Cool.
So,
very excited.
Yeah, I am happy to watch that again.
If you had picked that, because I thought you were going to, if you had picked that, my backup that I would have paired with it was going to be Blade 2, which is another one that I really want to watch.
Okay.
Guillermo del Toro's Blade 2. I have seen it before, but it's been a long time, and I wanted to watch it again. I'll just watch it again by myself.
Killer Condom.
I'm getting Killer Condom. I'll watch 30 Days a Night, and then I'll double bill it myself. I'll watch Blade 2, just not for the podcast. I'll just watch it by myself.
Okay, sounds good. Right. Well, it sounds like next week's going to be a little bit more entertaining and not quite as depressing.
Not quite as depressing.
I hope so, anyway. So, yes, well, that's been us, the Happy Brothers. We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Skinky Malinky.
You wouldn't Skinamarink.
You wouldn't. You don't know me. Maybe I would.
You don't know me.